everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and it's time to talk about the third installment of an NXT UK TakeOver event. We're heading back to Blackpool for NXT UK TakeOver Part 2. Let's take a look at what happened. Before I begin, a big shout out to everybody who joined myself and Tom Campbell for our live reactions. One of the more hectic, I think, live streams that we've ever done, just because of a few audio issues early on, which we were thankfully able to sort midway through the stream. So thanks for sticking with us, and thanks to everybody who watched along. But now on to the first match of the show, and a surprisingly short match for the opening match of a TakeOver event. Trent Seven versus Eddie Dennis, in a match that I believe went under 10 minutes long. Trent Seven was hot straight out of the gate, ducking Eddie Dennis's attempt at jumping off him at the bell and picking up a very close near fall. It almost looked like Trent was going to pick up an immediate flash victory. That would have been a really shocking way to start the show. And it turned into a bit of a back and forth match with the crowd firmly behind Trent Seven. Everybody wanted the British Strong Style member to pull out a big victory. But in fact, it was Eddie Dennis who resorted to a bit of heelish tactics to get the job done. He looked every inch the new heel on the block in NXT UK, by the way. I don't mean new as in we haven't seen much of him, it's just that his run has been slightly disrupted by injuries over the past couple of years. But he came out with an evil entrance mask on, for lack of a better term, and resorted to evil tactics as well, removing the turnbuckle pad, and you knew that heelishness was afoot. Eddie went for his Razor's Edge kind of move. I think it's Splash Mountain into the exposed turnbuckle, but they subverted the exposed turnbuckle trope magnificently, because when you see a turnbuckle removed, or a turnbuckle pad removed, you think someone's going into that. And a little bit earlier on, Trent Seven did go into it, but it didn't lead to the finish of the match. So Eddie Dennis went, right, I'm just going to chuck him overhead into it. The ref stood in the way and did not allow it to happen for a second. So Eddie Dennis just threw Trent Seven out of the ring, clean out of the ring, over the top rope. Absolutely terrifying. There was a member of the ring crew there, or a trainee or somebody, to catch him as he plummeted towards the floor, but it was a really unique and terrifying spot, and it made Eddie Dennis look absolutely ruthless. But still, Trent Seven got to look a little bit resilient, because as he was dragged back in the ring by Eddie Dennis, he managed to get his shoulder up before the count of 3, before Dennis finally put him away with the next stop driver. Yeah, this finish was different, and it really does help get Eddie Dennis over as a sadistic and brutal heel. And I think, given the way that it went down, and given the fact that he's beat one of the more popular members of the UK scene in the form of Trent Seven, I think it shows that they've got an interest, NXT UK, in really pushing Eddie Dennis in the future as the kind of the new big heel to look out for. Next up, triple threat action as Kaylee Ray defends her UK Women's Championship against both Toni Storm and Piper Niven. The bell rings and Storm immediately goes for Kaylee Ray. It's personal between the two, given all the mind games that Kaylee Ray has played on her former friend over the past, quite a long time actually. They've been feuding for a little while. There are some nice triple threat spots and double teams and stuff all the way throughout the early and middle stages of this match, but no woman is able to gain an advantage over the other two, and at one point all three are just down in the ring, a triple down spot. So Kaylee Ray gets sick of this and fetches a chair from underneath the ring, because remember, no DQs in a triple threat match. She doesn't just hit someone with a chair, she actually wraps it around Toni Storm's neck and looks to stamp on it, potentially breaking Toni Storm's neck in kayfabe. But Piper Niven makes the save, because she's a babyface and so is Toni Storm. Or at least that's what I thought at first, but then they squared off against each other, even though Niven had just saved Toni Storm. Toni Storm still had the chair, of course, because it had been around her neck. She got it in her hands, and Piper Niven was like, go on then, hit me with it, come on. And I was like, oh, this is really intense. But then Kaylee Ray returned to her feet on the apron, and both of the babyfaces looked at her instead and thought, let's beat up the champion a little bit more. There were some really convincing near falls down the stretch, with the third woman always being on hand to save the day and break up the pinfall attempt. But the closest and most memorable came when Toni Storm slid into the ring and seemed too far away to break up the pinfall, so she just caught the referee's hand instead as it was making its way to the canvas. A very unique and memorable spot. I really enjoyed it, and it really showed the desperation of Toni Storm to win back that UK Women's Championship. Eventually, Storm headed up top and hit a nice frog splash onto Piper Niven. It looked like she had the match and the title won, but Kaylee Ray was there with a big super kick to the back of the head, knocking Toni Storm out of the pinfall attempt and stealing the victory for herself. Boo! Boo you, Kaylee Ray. You'll get yours one day. What am I doing? Next up, before the show I said this was my pick for match of the night, and it certainly was. It was an absolutely phenomenal singles bout between Tyler Bate and Jordan Devlin, two of the best all-round wrestlers, in my opinion, in the entire world today. Early on, it's shown that Jordan Devlin has really done his homework, blocking Tyler Bates, his bop and bang, the fake out 1-2 punch that he does, or I guess it's just one punch, but the fake, you know what I mean. But Jordan Devlin doesn't get faked out by it. He gets his hands up and blocks it, really showing that he's really prepared for this match. They move into some really nice classic UK wrestling exchanges, but on fast forward obviously, because this is modern wrestling and both guys can do it. It's so smooth. It's not like they're rushing. They're just so smooth with their movements. There's no wasted moment at all during these exchanges. It escalates into bigger and bigger spots throughout the match, and this got, I think, over 20 minutes, and it deserved it. It was a brilliant match. I can't state that enough. And eventually Tyler Bate caught Jordan Devlin in an airplane spin, and if you've seen Tyler Bate before, you know his airplane spins are like nobody else's in wrestling. He spins Devlin for ages and ages, a very long time, and then drops him with a brainbuster for a very nice near fall. Devlin, though, works his way back into the match, beats up Tyler Bate, hits him with a nice kind of springboard stunner to the apron, and Tyler Bate's down and out on the outside. Devlin gets back in the ring, and Bate just about beats the referee's 10 count. Now they just punch each other lots, with Nigel McGuinness on commentary calling it Fry versus Takayama. And if you've seen that MMA bout, you'll know exactly what he's talking about. There were some stiff shots here, or maybe the illusion of stiff shots. I'm not sure how much they were actually connecting, but it looked convincing either way, and obviously that's the most important thing. There was then an amazing sequence of reversals and counters of either guy's signature moves, which ended and culminated with Tyler Bate going for his rebound lariat, where he puts his shoulders either side of the top rope and bounces back, goes for the lariat, but Jordan Devlin is there to reverse it into a lovely Spanish fly for a lovely, lovely 2 count. Things escalate further in terms of drama as they both head to the very top rope and then swap positions from where they originally started, which was really risky, but both guys are apparently tightrope artists as well as wrestlers, because they did it. And then Devlin hit a big avalanche Spanish fly this time, but again, it just wasn't enough to put away Tyler Bate. Eventually Devlin does get caught. He gets caught with the Tyler Driver 97 and kicks out at 2. He survives Tyler Bate's finisher, so he just hits him with his other finisher, the spiral tap thing from the top rope, and pins him. I don't know if it's exactly the same as AJ Styles' spiral tap, but it is still very, very good. And that's enough. That pins Jordan Devlin to the mat for 3 seconds, and Tyler Bate wins the match, which personally, I was surprised by. I thought this was going to be Jordan Devlin's big coming out party in NXT UK. I thought this was going to propel him to the main event scene, but apparently that's not happening quite yet. Yeah, I thought this would be Jordan Devlin going over huge on Tyler Bate, but instead, it was a renewed interest, or a continued interest from NXT UK in portraying Tyler Bate as a force to always be reckoned with. I mean, this was really hammered home as he was celebrating in the ring, by the camera panning to the balcony where we saw Johnny Saint, William Regal and Triple Bloody H all giving him a big standing ovation. Next up, the 4-team ladder match for the NXT UK tag team titles, pitting the champions Gallus, Mark Coffey and Wolfgang against Imperium, represented by Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel, against South Wales Subculture, Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews, and the Grizzled Young Vets, Zach Gibson and James Drake. And by the way, all 4 teams spot on, wearing lovely matching gear. It looked so nice. The visuals of this match were really, really impressive, and it made it easy to work out who was who with all these bodies flying around everywhere. Lovely stuff. In the opening package for this match, they showed footage of old ladder matches like Shawn versus Razor, the classic TLC matches between the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, and there were a few homages to those TLC matches peppered throughout this match. I probably didn't catch all of them, but there were certainly some good ones that I'll mention as I review the match. All 4 teams really got a chance to show what they could do in this match, but I think the stipulation lent itself most naturally to the smallest team, Mandrews and Flash Morgan Webster, who really got a chance at certain points to pull off some very impressive stuff. The first one I can think of, for example, was Mark Andrews hitting a gorgeous shooting star press off the side of a ladder to Mark Coffey. All 4 teams helped construct this devilish apparatus in the middle of the ring, with several ladders stacked next to each other, and then a ladder bridge onto the ropes, and then on the other side a ladder sandwiching poor Zach Gibson in the middle so he couldn't take part in this spot, and everyone clambered all over them and knocked each other down slowly one by one, and eventually everything culminated with Zach Gibson managing to get free from his little ladder prison and helping James Drake take control, and from there James Drake was able to hit a gorgeous 450 from the ladder bridge to an opponent on the canvas. I think it was to Mandrews actually, with very, very little room for error, but he pulled it off flawlessly. But now the lovely babyface boys, South Wales Subculture, take control of the match and lay Gallus on a pair of tables either side of a ladder on the outside of the ring. It looks as though they're going to do the big old Hardy Boys double spot from either side of the ladder simultaneously, but unfortunately, as Mark Andrews is giving the right hands to Mark Coffey on his ladder, it just breaks underneath. It's like the opposite of Matthew's I am the table thing. It was really unfortunate, but fair play to Mandrews and Flash. They totally improvised and it was really, really cool. They both got on the same side of the same ladder and did a double dive off it onto poor Wolfgang below. And Wolfgang even hit us with the Devon Dudley cell, the scooting along on the floor because he's in so much pain. It was really, really fun. The Grizzled young vets are back in with a chance, but Mandrews gets a kendo stick to fight them off, and now here comes Imperium to stop South Wales Subculture picking up the win. It looks like Eichner and Bartel have the match sewn up and are going to become new champions, but here comes Gallus roaring back into the match to protect their titles. Eichner gets speared through a ladder in the corner of the ring, Bartel flies to the outside, and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang Gallus retain the UK tag team titles. But could Joe Coffey make it 2 for 2 on the night for Gallus? Let's find out. Yes, that main event was Volta defending the NXT UK Championship against Joe Coffey. And Coffey really took it to Volta early on. I mean, we've often seen opponents start slowly against Volta or attempt to go straight for him and just get beaten down for their troubles. But I don't think we've ever seen anyone dominate Volta straight out of the gate as quickly as Joe Coffey did here. Unless your name's Drew McIntyre at Survivor Series, let's not think about that too much. Let's not even talk about it. But after quite a few minutes, quite a period of domination from the challenger, Volta, of course, as he always does, unless it's Survivor Series, worked his way back into the match. And of course, it was due to his devastating chops. But at one point, he actually showed off his all-around game, Volta, showing off his submission abilities, for example, which often go overlooked because he's such a big, scary man. Joe Coffey jumped off the top rope, Volta managed to counter into a double leg takedown into a Boston Crab, and then transition from the Boston Crab really smoothly for a big guy into a lovely STF type submission, but Joe Coffey was able to make the ropes. And it's worth saying that if you're familiar with Joe Coffey, you know he is an incredibly strong wrestler, and he demonstrated that strength in this match, hitting at one point a lovely vertical suplex on Volta, and also an amazing German suplex as well. It's so frightening to see such a large man just be chucked around with apparent ease. But then we get the turning point of the match as Volta goes for the shotgun dropkick. Joe Coffey lays down beneath it, avoids the move, but the referee takes it just full in the chest. It's an incredible ref bump, to be fair. He gets absolutely flattened by this shotgun dropkick and spills to the outside. I think the referee was Chris Sharp, who is a lovely man, and I feel so bad for him, but he did a tremendous job here. Coffey gets a visual pinfall attempt. I'm not sure if it was a 3 count, but he certainly had Volta apparently dead to rights. But of course, there's no referee, and here comes Alexander Wolf to take control and interfere on behalf of his stable leader. But here comes another of Volta's enemies, Ilya Dragunov, to even the odds, and he takes out Alexander Wolf with Torpedo Moscow, but it sends Wolf flying into Joe Coffey, who tweaks his knee, and that will play a crucial role down the stretch. But despite hurting his leg, Coffey is portrayed as a very, very resilient challenger here. He kicks out of Volta's big signature lariat, he kicks out of Volta's big splash from the top rope, the terrifying splash that put away Pete Dunne for him to win that title all those months ago. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that those near falls were counted by a replacement ref. It's not as if the original ref survived that shotgun dropkick. No, he was out of commission, don't worry about that, for the rest of the match. But as well as Joe Coffey, Volta also got to demonstrate his resilience too, surviving 2 of Joe Coffey's signature discus lariats, all the best for the bells. He kicked out of those, and then Volta just took things to the next level, as he did against Tyler Bate last year. He was just hitting power bombs, chops to the back and the back of the neck, more power bombs, sleeper suplexes, everything he could throw at Joe Coffey. But eventually the move that put him away is a move that I can't recall seeing Volta use before, certainly not as a finisher. It was almost like a crossface, but with both arms around the side of the neck, cranking back really hard, rather than over the top of the head around the face like the traditional crossface. It was brutal looking, but I didn't expect Joe Coffey to tap out, and that's exactly what happened. Tom made a really good point about this. He said he'd have rather seen Joe Coffey pass out in that submission rather than submit, and I think I agree as well, especially after he was portrayed as such a resilient challenger, kicking out of Volta's biggest signature moves and surviving all the powerbombs and chops and everything, only to tap out to a submission in relatively quick fashion. It was a little bit strange. And that seems to be the end of the show. The other 2 members of Imperium come out and join Volta and Wolf in the middle of the ring, all standing tall and proud. The signature appears in the bottom corner, and a roaring pop just kind of gradually grows from the corner of the arena, and by the time it's fully realized, everyone is screaming at the top of their lungs, and nobody quite knows why watching at home, until we see the Undisputed Era jump the barricade, all 4 members, and storm the ring. The Era take out Imperium, they knock the 3 members out of the ring, leaving Volta alone. They hit him, O'Reilly and Fish hit him with the high-low combination, Cole hits him with the last call, and they all stand tall doing their own taunt, which I can never do at the first attempt. And that ends the show, building very nicely to Worlds Collide. And that was how NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool 2 ended. The third NXT UK TakeOver event, and a very, very strong show from top to bottom, as always, from the NXT UK brand. I don't think it was quite as good as the last one, which was really, really superb, especially that main event between Tyler Bate and Volta, but this show had some really good matches too. The main event was good, great performance by both Volta and Joe Coffey. The ladder match was really entertaining in its own right, but my favourite match of all was Tyler Bate versus Jordan Devlin, which absolutely stole the show. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.